our third this year, I'm pleased to say. And hopefully we'll get another one in before the year. So today, just moving forward. So again, as always, two great speakers, and we're getting into the depths of the MuleSoft platform in some of these topics tonight. So first up, we'll have Alyanna from Capgemini, who will be going through some reliable messaging in Mule 4 and leveraging the AMQ capability. And then Yohanes, who also joins us from MuleSoft, and we'll be going into more about RTF and really how to start leveraging and use the RTF and how to set up and use it in a production environment. And that, I'm not sure if any of those who joined us in the last session, we did touch upon RTF during that session and what RTF was about. So for those of you who may be not familiar with it as yet, you can, after this session, of course, go back and maybe take a look at a little bit of the content from the last MuleSoft Meetup back in whatever it was, I think maybe June or July now, and the video recordings on the Meetup website as well. And we'll then round off with some information. So Royston will take us through some news and from the MuleSoft community and what's going on, and then there'll be a little quiz where there are a couple of prizes to win. So stay on board until the end. So just quick introductions. Again, we'll go through this quickly. So for those of you who've not joined the MuleSoft Singapore Meetup previously, so just introduce myself quickly. So my name is Julian Douch. I'm Senior Director at Capgemini, and I lead our MuleSoft practice across Southeast Asia and Japan. I've been with Capgemini a couple of years now, but having set up what was White Sky Labs in 2018, and a long-term veteran, having done integration since 1999 and 2000, so a long way back. And to you, Royston.
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name is Royston Lobo, and I work as a technical architect in the customer success team here at MuleSoft. I've had the privilege of being with MuleSoft in Sydney, Australia, for about 2.5 years, and earlier this year I relocated to Singapore to work with customers all across Asia on their MuleSoft implementations. So I focus more on the platform and the strategy side for MuleSoft. So and it's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you, Julian.
Thank you, Royston, and as always, good to have you on board here in Singapore. So without further ado, so we're going to hand over to Ali, and she is going to take us through her presentation for this evening. So Ali, do you want, or Royston, do you want to give Ali control if I stop sharing?
Yep, once you stop sharing, Ali will be able to kick off. While Ali's setting up. Oh, yep, sorry. Thank you, Ali. Over to you.
Take too long.
Yeah, go ahead, Royce.
I was just going to make a mention, if you have questions and comments during the session, the chat is available for everyone to contribute to. So that was all. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good evening from Singapore. I'm Ali. And before I begin, I have 2 questions. One would be, are you able to see the slideshow I'm presenting?
Yes, we can.
And am I clearly audible?
As clear as I could ask for.
Thank you, Royston, for the confirmation. So again, I'm Ali, a senior consultant in Capgemini, and I've been in the integration space for about a decade now. And I enjoy working with our clients in helping them find creative solutions on how best to achieve their requirements and objectives, of course, with the help of MuleSoft. So for today, I would be demonstrating various ways on how to ensure message reliability in MuleSoft. And when we say reliable messaging, it's in the context of message queues. So you may have worked with MQs when the requirement prescribed a pub sub model, or when it's not necessary for the consumer to wait for the response of the intended receiver. Using MQs, it also gives us the advantages of reduced dependencies across our applications. So in case one of our systems go down, it should not ideally affect the other consumers. Of course, it comes with its own caveats, as it's a fire and forget mechanism. We have to ensure that our messages are indeed getting delivered. And in case we encounter errors, we want to ensure that those reliable errors are not received more than once by our intended receiver. And if all retries have been exhausted or some of the errors are not retryable, then we just want to park them somewhere where we can review them and later on investigate further on how best to remediate or if they are indeed retryable. For our demo for today, the use case we would be demonstrating would be, we would be sending logs using JSON logger to my local Elasticsearch server via AMQ or Anypoint Message Queue. And in case my local server is not reachable, we want to retry those connectivity errors. And in case of data errors, we don't want to spend our resources retrying them. And instead, we just want to send them in a separate DLQ. So these components, you would see most of them later as we move along in our demonstration. So there are two ways we want to show you on how we can achieve reliable messaging. The first one we would call the error handler approach, because in this option, we would be leveraging MuleSoft or Anypoint Studios on error scope. And what we want to focus on here is that we are retrying, but we don't want to infinitely retry. I've seen instances where we just kept on retrying, and by the time the receiver managed to resuscitate itself, it went back to being shut down again because of the flood or influx of messages. So we only want to retry for a specific number of times. The second approach we would be covering would be using the circuit breaker pattern. So if you're not yet familiar with this icon, this is how we usually depict circuit breakers in our diagrams. And in this case, the original state or default state of the MQ subscriber would be, it would be in closed status. So this line here would be connected here. And in case the errors we are monitoring are hit or it exceeds the threshold we have set, the circuit breaker would trip, it would get disconnected, thus it would move to the open state. Well, it's not going to stay in that open state forever. So how else are we going to continue receiving messages? We are also going to set a trip timeout value so that during this duration, every time it resets, the circuit breaker would proceed to the partial open state where it would allow one message to come through. And if the receiver is already back up, then it would go back again to the closed status. But if it's still inaccessible, then we go back to the open state until this trip timeout is again executed. So on to our demo. These are the flows that we have. And as mentioned, we would be leveraging the excellent JSON logger connector that MuleSoft Consulting has provided. And if you would see, we have two log points here, one for start and one for end. As for the transformation here, it's just a direct mapping back to our postman, and it's expected to always be a successful response. So looking into our JSON logger, we have configured it to go to our MQ, which has the error handler, and that goes the same for this log step. We have another configuration here for the circuit breaker, and we will switch to that configuration later on. Now, once that log message is sent to our logger with error handler MQ, we are just extracting the associated metadata on that MQ message. And from there, as mentioned, we are leveraging MuleSoft's on-error scope. And depending on the error type we encountered, we are going to resend it or just send it straight back to the DLQ. So for the first example, we will always force an expression error, and it's expected to go to this any scope. And for connectivity errors, it would go here, which is a separate MQ. So you might wonder why we are using a separate MQ and why not just reroute it again here. Well, we call it a common error handler in case you have other applications who may follow the same design or flow. So in this case, all of those applications can leverage this common error handler as there are no hard-coded values here. It's just extracting the retry counts and max attempts per message. And if it's still within the prescribed max attempt, then it goes back to the original queue or its source queue. If this condition is not met anymore, then it should go to the DLQ. Okay, so let's proceed with the first sample. It should be a non-retriable error. So I'll send one request, which should be equivalent to 2 log messages. And yep, they're all non-retriable. And if we look into our DLQ, yeah, they are there. So they got sent immediately to our DLQ. So let's just take note of that so that we can monitor how many messages we are expecting in this common error handlers DLQ. Okay, let me terminate this one. So as you notice, we did not do any retry and there's no pause in accepting the messages. Yep, so now it's going to go straight to my Elastic server. And looking at this one, this is my Kibana dashboard. And yep, it is not up and running. So in this case, if I run this one, there should be multiple attempts and a delay per retry. Okay, so as mentioned, it's also important that we do not continuously retry. And in this case, our error handler has a set delivery delay so that every time it receives a retriable message, it does not immediately fire it. So in case the intended receiver only experiences a hiccup, we don't want to immediately exhaust the retry. So at least we give it time to recover, and then from there, it might be intermittent. So the second attempt might be successful already. So now we're back up. And if I send another set of requests, so we should be expecting 2 log messages, which should be retried. Yep. So our delay is set to 5 seconds. If we would see, yep, 33 after 5 seconds, 38, and so forth. So you would see 4 attempts, but actually the first one would be the first time we called the server. And since it was unreachable, then we have another 3 additional retry attempts. And in this case, the validation error was not met the validation step was not met anymore. So in this case, it threw an error and it should go to our DLQ. So what I've noticed here is there's quite a delay in moving these messages from this queue to this queue. So we will review that later. I will take note of that here. So later when we go back, it should be a total of 4 messages in our DLQ. While waiting for that, let's switch to the second approach, which would be leveraging the circuit breaker pattern. Let me just close this one for good measure. And I hope it's quite straightforward because in the interest of time, I cannot show that part where the Elasticsearch server has been accessible now. So let me just switch here. I will point to the MQ with the circuit breaker. And in this case, once it gets sent to this MQ with the circuit breaker, you would notice that there's no error scope here anymore. And we are not taking note of the retry counts anywhere. Instead, what we have is this advanced configuration here where we are referencing to a global config of the MQ circuit breaker. So you can also set separate circuit breaker per subscriber if you want to tweak or further customize how you are setting up the circuit breaker. But in this case, we will be using a global config. And looking into the settings, we only want to monitor these type of errors. And if the error threshold is met, then the circuit breaker would trip, so it would disconnect. And every 15 seconds, it would reset and check if the server is now back up. So if for our first example, we are going to always have an expression error, so it should not trigger or activate the circuit breaker at all. Unfortunately, I cannot give any clues on what would be the questions later on, so you can tune in what would be the probable answers in our quiz later. Okay, so we are pointing to the circuit breaker and it's a Mule expression error. Let me clear my logs here. I would be sending 2 subsequent messages, which would then be equivalent to 4 log messages. So if you remember, the threshold we are monitoring is 3 error. Yeah. So 4 log messages. If we want to see here. So as you can see, this is the JSON generated by that JSON logger. Quite extensive information for just a simple configuration in that connector. So we have 4 log messages, and to ensure that the circuit breaker was not tripped, so we managed to process all of them. So we have 4 Mule expressions as well. Let me just comment this out. And in this case, My Elastic server should still be down. And let's run it. So we have 4 Mule expression messages, which should be sent to the DL queue. So let's just note that here. And again, I would be sending 2 subsequent messages so that in the third error, the circuit breaker should trip. Okay, so 4 log messages. Yep, 4 log messages. And as for the error type, it met our condition for the circuit breaker. Okay, so we have 4, so sometimes it's a hit or miss. Okay, let's check again. So now we should be expecting 4 messages in our DLQ for now. And let me try putting up my Elasticsearch server and wait a bit. And we'll send one more. So in this case, we are expecting 2 log messages, 1, 2, and it was during this time that the trip timeout was in partial open state. So it accepted 1 message, but as you can see, it's still an error. So it waited a bit. After 15 seconds, second 23, it was able to accept the remaining 1 message, and it seemed to have been sent to our Elastic server already. So if I will refresh this one, we should see 1 log message. Yep. So in that last 15 minutes, we only managed to push 1 log message as part of the circuit breaker partial open state. So in that last request, one of the messages still encountered an error, so there should be 9 messages in total. Now, moving back to our DLQs, let's see if it will prove me wrong. Okay, still seems to be in queue. Let's see what happened here because it should be already in our DLQ. I don't think it would be there anyway, so let's see. So yeah, now it's in our common error handler DLQ. So yep, verified. It indeed got sent to the common error handler DLQ. As for the circuit breaker, let us check. Yep, nothing is there anymore. And 8, because we were able to process all 4 earlier and we encountered the error. But yep, so in summary, those are the 2 ways on how we can retry and keep track of our failed MQ messages. And if we want to highlight the differences for the error handler approach, it's based on how many attempts we retry per message. So, and then on the other hand, for the circuit breaker, in our sample, we don't have a retry attempt per message. Instead, as soon as the unique messages meet our threshold, then it would trip the circuit breaker. I hope that demo gave you some idea on how best to implement this in your projects. And would you have any questions?
Thank you for that presentation, Ali. Thank you very much. If you do have questions for Ali on this, please do start putting them in the comments box and I can read them out for Ali to answer. Maybe you ask people, get their thinking caps on. So I think my summation and in all of this area is, everyone typically in projects and when we get on board and implementing APIs, everyone's very much focused on delivering the functional outcome of the APIs themselves. And only in general terms as an afterthought, people start thinking around what happens in all these error situations and thinking around end-to-end solutions and things like that. So it's, I guess my key point would be number one, always start thinking of such solutions like Ali's gone through here, really upfront and as part of your, I guess, even part of your initial enablement journeys of the MuleSoft platform, I guess, number one, and perhaps as you start to go through and implement different solutions in different contexts as part of your business, then with either with your customers or in your own enterprise, start really kind of giving some attention to some of these practices. So yeah, really kind of good presentation. Maybe one thing I'd look at also is, and maybe your thoughts, either Ali or Royson as well, what else would you do in the context of this type of solution? So I'm thinking, we very much work today with a lot of web applications and mobile applications and really kind of high volume transactions coming in and they can flood back end systems and things like that. What other components and things should the folk on the session think around in terms of an overall solution? Because this, in my view, is just one thing, I guess, that you could do.
In my case, it would depend on the capability of the receiving service. So if we already know that they cannot receive subsequent number of transactions per second, then in our MQ, we can add the configurable delay so that even though our MQ is receiving multiple messages already, it's not sending them all in one go. So there's still a delay per message.
The point I would add there is it's useful to consider, I guess, graceful failures, especially when we're talking about end-to-end experiences. So this is something I do practically every day, but when something doesn't work, the next thing you do is you immediately retry and you refresh, typically in a web page. And if you can think of a failure scenario, if you have, let's say, a website ordering, a ticket ordering service, if everyone starts refreshing and it's not working and everyone continues refreshing, that's just increasing the load without actually relieving the pressure or providing the service. And so instead of having the default behavior of humans trying to just retry again and again, if we can be more innovative about how do we change the behavior so that I don't do that thing that would cause more harm to the system. Instead, it's like, hey, the system's busy. Either a queuing system, come back in 3 minutes, or we'll refresh this page automatically when we're back online. Something like that, which would change the behavior to relieve the system pressure. It needs us to be more holistic in our thinking and involve the user experience team, but it means that we think beyond just the systems that are involved and we start thinking about the user experience as well. That's just something that I find I often don't think about it when I use it, but I'm like, yeah, this is not a very good user experience.
Very good. And I guess from what I've seen, potentially all about also leveraging throttling, I guess, in part on using APIM and policies, I guess that could be another preventative thing on that side of things. And then, you know, as probably most of us may be working with integrating into some legacy applications that as well that may not scale in many situations. And you get those types of errors that I think Ali was showing, right? You might get connectivity issues because it's just not responding in enough time. And effectively throwing more and more traffic at it just then compounds the issue, I guess. So making sure that we can, I guess, throttle it at the front end and kind of give some relief in terms of these, whilst it does come back to life in a good way, can also be part of that strategy, I guess. So any other questions from, actually, sorry, I didn't refresh. Sorry, Srinivas. When should you use the retry count and circuit breaker approach?
Well, in my opinion, it would depend on how well you know your receiver is. If you are expecting it to be accessible 99.9% of the time, I would recommend the retry count approach because it's retrying per message. And if you also know that it cannot get flooded or it cannot die again from getting spammed, that would be a good recommendation. But on the other hand, if it's not important to you to retry per message, and you want your MQ to automatically pick up those messages without any intervention, then we could proceed with the circuit breaker approach. Of course, you can always do a mix of both, but it would still depend on the requirements of your functionality. Did I answer your question, Srinivas?
Maybe assume so. Thank you, Ali. If there's any other questions, actually, still feel free to put them in and we could pick them up as we go along. In the goodness of time, I will probably move on to our next presenter. So Yohanes from MuleSoft, hopefully you've got your slides available and at the ready.
Yes. So do you able to see my screen now?
I can see your screen.
Yeah, okay. Sure.
Take us away.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Yohanes. I'm from MuleSoft. I'm a little bit about myself is I've been on MuleSoft more than 2 years now, and then I'm a part of a ICI services team, and then I'm a technical architect, and I'm also a Java SME for some like a PCE, like a runtime fabric and a service mesh. So all for my side, and for the agenda for today is I will covering 4 main topics. So the first is what is architecture consideration of RTF, and then how you can implement this on your organization. And then the second is what a typical challenge to operationalize the RTF on the production or other typical situation, and then how you can troubleshoot that RTF, and then we will discuss more about the guide or to troubleshooting RTF, and then we talk more about the Catalyst Knowledge Hub, like this runbook template that you can use and you can enhance to support your operational team to L1 and L2 that will be mainly in touch for RTF. And so next one is what is the architecture consideration? What is typical architecture consideration when you try to implement RTF? Typically, you have 3 main consideration. The first is the environment. So you want to implement a single environment for all RTF, or you want to multiple environment for RTF. The second is how you can configure the business group. So is RTF will serving as a single business group or will be serving a multiple business group? And the next one is a type of API. So is this what kind of API that you want to deploy to that RTF? So is a public, is private, or you want to separate this API between public and private, or you want to combine both API into one single RTF? So in summary, this is the some consideration. So first is environment consideration. So usually we have the difficult environment like development, testing, staging, production. The upper side is we have different RTF for per each of the environment. But in the lower side, we saw that in the dev or testing, or some call it SIT, or some call it, and then the staging, it is combined into one single RTF instance. So that is another the first consideration when you want to implement RTF. The next one is a business group. So it's a RTF can serve multiple business group. So it's a business group if each of the environment can have different business group, different RTF instance for business group, or you want combine for example RTF dev have will be serving multiple business group as one. So the last one is more about the API configuration. So you have the public and private API. So for this case is usually we will separate the public and private start staging or UAT, some call it UAT, and then and until production. So for example, if the API is it will be exposed publicly, then it's supposed to be deployed on the RTF instance for public only. Same thing is if this only internal. So if we talk about API-led connectivity, so if this we call it explain API or proxy, that will be a part of the public, but for more of and a process layer and a system layer, that will be more private. That will be it can be deployed on this different of instance. So that's all the typical consideration for RTF, how you can implement RTF in your organization. The next one is we move to the next agenda. So more about what a typical challenge in a production when you operationalize the RTF. So this is typical question coming from L1, L2 of RTF. So like somehow RTF shown it is connected on the runtime manager, and where I can check the application log inside RTF. And how much resource that I need to allocate it for one single replica, one single application, and how limit my access or my off center, and somehow RTF shown degraded, meaning it's not healthy at runtime manager, and how to fix those, and how can we try to call the API directly without ingress. But that's a lot of questions similar like this that coming from L1, L2 when you operationalize the RTF. So that's why the run book is important, meaning it will be provide the guide for your L1, L2 to whenever they find issue in the RTF, in the operationals of RTF, then they can refer to that run book and then tackle the issue quickly. So so this is the next is a troubleshooting guide. So the first one is a typical troubleshooting guide for application development problem. So there's supposed to be 4 steps only. So the first is check status application deployment on runtime manager. If the pod is created, and check is a pod or replica is created on the runtime fabric, and check this pod status is running or not. So or we can check the log itself. So let me go to the Anypoint platform. So the first step that we need to check is your application is up and running. So for example, this is a target to the RTF. So okay, so this is one is running or not, and then it can be deployed successfully or not. And then the next step is go to your RTF instance. You can use the off center or you can use the command line. So if we go to command line, then we talk about the appliance version. Then appliance will use the pre-built Kubernetes for you. we call it gravity. So to check the log, check the status of the application, then we can need to enter the gravity console. So for this, we can check back to the troubleshooting guide, check the is pod is created or not. So first, I want to check if this application is running or that really running on RTF or not. So that is quite common. So we can see this one is running. So status is running, and then the status is 2/2, meaning is both of container inside single replica is up and running. Why is 2? Because we have into one single replica always have a 2 container running. First is your application. Second is sidecar. Is in this case is endpoint monitoring agent. So the first one is will be endpoint monitoring agent running. After that, your application will be run. So that is the first troubleshooting guide, how you can troubleshoot any deployment problem of your application. And the next one is check the cluster problem. So this is a typical situation on L1, L2. Suddenly, your runtime fabric is not showing healthy in this console, and how you can follow up for this. So that's so the first step is of course check your status of your Gravity. Again, Gravity is your appliance, is a Kubernetes appliance that shipped together of part of the runtime fabric. So if we back to the console, so this Gravity status will be output the cluster status. Is this active? Is this all the node is healthy or not? So that is typical expected scenario from healthy cluster. So the next one is check if there your deployment agent have error or not. So how is RTF is communicate with control plane is via agent. So inside the RTF, we have an application called RTF agent. So to check the healthiness of that agent, then we can use this command to check is there any error in agent or not. So basically, if we back to this, if you check I need to go enter to Gravity. So this is all the necessary application that part of the RTF agent. So the first one is agent that will be communicated, that responsible to communicate to control plane, and then and other stuff is mainly for use internal purpose. So for example, the resource case is will be used for casing your application binary, and then registry credits, the cluster IP is something that if you use the cluster inside the RTF, that will be this one is the one that is responsible to handling those. And then if you enable your external external log forwarder, then this application, this replica is supposed to be up and running. So so what inside this troubleshooting tab, first we need to check the healthiness of the agent. So we can just check the log for this. So that will be print all the log communication log from within agent and control plane. So if you want, so we can analyze the log if there, for example, this is will be answering L1 L2 question related to the if why is suddenly my cluster is disconnected from control plane, is showing not active in any point platform. So suddenly it's disconnected, something like this. Then you can just take a look on this log. and you will find if there any error that preventing this agent to communicate to control plane. So that is the one. And then the next step is the check your RT status. So this is using the RTF CTL command. I will be check all the the healthiness of the connectivity test between your cluster and the control plane. So for example, if I set this, so this will be checking all the connectivity within the runtime fabric and a control plane. And this is also applicable for not only appliance, but also if you deploy on a self-managed Kubernetes like AKS or Azure Kubernetes service or Google Kubernetes engine. So this is the first, and if you see that all is healthy, then meaning your connect there no connectivity issue between your cluster and control plane. And after that is just checking all the event status, pod status. Maybe there's something happen in the background and other stuff. So first is get pod all the application name, and then get event if there any suddenly have some kind cluster event that preventing the application to be run. That is that's another checking that you need to do when you get a faulty cluster. So this all step will be supposed to be included in a runbook. So that's will supposed to be handy by the L1 and L2 support of the RTF. So for that thing, we have the template in a Knowledge Graph Catalyst. So we call it the Operation Runbook template for RTF, and then consists all the necessary steps that I already explained to you, and you can just go to that catalyst and download this template, and you can enhance and you can add update those documents depend on your usage and depending on your use case. So let's walk through with the runbook itself. So what is the template? What inside the template itself? So this is the runbook. So this runbook will be like first guidance when for L1, L2 support RTF to find or resolve any issue quickly. So what inside this runbook is will consist the how you install, and then how you want to do the ingress configuration here, and then how you can add the static DNS. So sometimes your application need to reach certain services or set services that that services is somehow is cannot be added on your public DNS. So you can add additional static DNS as part of the cluster that only applicable for that single cluster. So, and then how you can add server. So in the future, if you have the multiple, so you right now you have the 2 or 3 worker node, and then you see that there's some requirement or say some capacity issue that need to, and then we need to add additional worker node. Then that's you can add additional server. So add how we can add those server, it can be done is manually or can be done is automatically. And all the sort of the command that really life-saving when you deal with the RTF appliance or maybe it's RTF self-managed as well. So the first one is this all the life-saving commands. So for example, checking the gravity or your appliance Kubernetes status, and then how to check the cluster health, and then and some other command on the Kubernetes side to check healthiness of the node, and then how we can describe the pod and everything, and then get the event. Is there any cluster event that prevent that causing delay or other stuff that preventing application to be deployed? And that's all the command that to put the list on the runbook. So again, your L1 and L2 can quickly use and quickly refer to this. And this also includes some other RTFCTL command. RTFCTL command is our CLI command that mainly used for managing the RTF. So this is all the example how you can use, like for example, like I just demo, just checking the status of the within the connectivity status within the cluster and then any point platform. And inside the cluster, the RTF will have several cron job. So this is the one that responsible do background process within the RTF and then the endpoint platform. The first one is the certificate renewal. This will be running every every day. So the certificate within the agent and control plane will be always renew every one day. And then how when we back to this the endpoint platform, right? And you can see the status here, and this heartbeat or health regular health check is done via the cron job. So if you see the update a minute ago, meaning the one of cron job our cluster status is just running a minute ago. So if we back to this runbooks, that cron job will cluster status runbook will running every 5 minutes to give the heartbeat of status of your cluster back to the control plane. And another one that very important is registry credential. So this will be always reset every 8 hours or 9 hours. So meaning all your, so when your application is running, right, it's try to download all available image or Mule runtime image that managed by MuleSoft, and then that image or that template is available in our private repository. And then that private repository is secured by the certain of credential. And credential will be always refreshed every 8 hours. So if you find that suddenly your application cannot be deployed, and then you see on the events that showing that this cannot be deployed because of the somehow the image cannot be pulled because of credential, then that's a sign that your cron job is not running, not working. Then there's some mitigation step for that. And the next one is the off-center role-based access. So how you can limit your access to off-center. So what is off-center? So back to this off-center. This is the off-center. This is the each of cluster or appliance cluster will be have some off-center that provide management job. So for example, I can go to server, login as a root to that server directly via this console and other stuff. So some of the customers, some of the user of the RTF don't want this capability to be open for all users. So will be this how the setting, the read only setting can be referred to this runbook. So this is how you can create a different role on the off center. So another one is some sort of what we encounter in some of the customers. So we have the very high latency within RTF and our control plane. How to mitigate those? That will be captured here in a runbook template. And the last one, but not least, is more about the what always being asked. So what is typical base sizing for per application inside the RTF? So this is a sizing reference that can be used for determine which kind of API, and then what is minimum, what's recommended sizing, and what a typical performance reference. But again, this one is something that cannot guaranteed. So you need to each of the API is unique. So it's depending on how your API behave. Uh, may or may not this sizing is enough for that. That's why we always recommended using the performance test. So if you have this, you can use this as base sizing, and then you just validate that in your performance test to see if this sizing is enough or not. And of course, runbook supposed we have the troubleshooting log. So this is all the uh, troubleshooting log that done before. So L1 and L2 support when they face the same problem, they can refer to this log and then the step and the symptom and how to resolve. So that is all the Catalyst runbook template that's quite helpful for you to operationalize RTF. So is there any question? Yep.
Okay, take a breath. A lot of information there, Yohanes. Very good, and thank you for that. I think always my comment is you can always tell a Mac user and a developer because they always use a black background.
We always like black team.
So thank you for taking us through that. I think there's RTF is becoming and a more popular choice. I think we said last time around it's definitely becoming an option where a lot of companies using MuleSoft in region are looking at the use of RTF and how you use it and moving to what can provide a lot of flexibility and scalability as a deployment architecture. Clearly also comes with, let's say, some levels of operational complexity and for sure teams need to understand how to set themselves up for success from an operational support aspect. So all the way through from, I guess, designing what that architecture is going to look like for RTF through to managing it and supporting it through operational runtime and production. So it's good to see, I think, that MuleSoft have clearly, maybe you've had a helping hand in this as well, but documented some of those best practices and operational procedures and etc. as part of Catalyst. And for those who don't know about Catalyst, I guess you can register for it, I think, via any point, right? Cloud Hub, I guess, in your account, and you can get access to a wealth of information, RTF, but also about best practices in design and implementation standards and all these types of things around the MuleSoft platform. So there's a lot of great information there. Okay. Okay, so here's the first question up from Louis. So is it possible to migrate for a configuration from EKS to AKS? And is there any impact on the current deployed APIs?
Okay, so for answer to those, let me confirm that configuration is something that is this API configuration. I believe is API configuration, right? So if your application already run on top of RTF and on EKS, right, and it's supposed to be list on the runtime manager, correct? And then you want to migrate that to the AKS or Azure. And for that case, you need to create another instance, RTF instance that's running on Azure. And then after it's ready, then you can just switch your deployment target from AKS to AKS. That's how it does. So for example, this my application, and I just want to change the target to the just stop this one and deploy again to the instance another instance, and then do some like we call it a blue-green approach. So first deploy both application, and then just do some after this one is ready on AKS or on target, then just shut down the other application.
I guess the same in the same context, Johannes. So for sure, there are also people running Cloud Hub, for example, and actually are now considering moving into using RTF, in their own premises or in their own cloud. Any impact on, so if I've developed APIs and they've been running without issue on Cloud Hub, and I want to move those APIs onto an RTF deployment runtime, any issues, anything people need to consider in that context?
Okay, so if the application is able to run the Cloud Hub, typically is able to run the RTF. So, but some consideration for this application to be run RTF. First is RTF not supporting any domain. If you use the Mule domain, then of course that cannot be deployed on RTF. First, always use the default domain. And the second one is consideration is the log appender. So an RTF, we only have one single log appender that will be using the console appender, and then how you can like I just demo how you check your application log, usually either via the kubectl command or via the off center So that is two way. Or if you have the log management system like Elasticsearch, Splunk, or Greylog and other stuff, then you can ship that log to that one using the out-of-the-box feature on RTF. That is two main consideration.
Very good, very good. So if there's any other questions, please you can comment. Royston, any? I know you've always got a point of view on RTF.
It was wonderful hearing one of our RTF experts in the region, Yohanes, speak about it. For me, I hadn't actually seen the operations runbook template before, so seeing some of the guidance in there, especially around sizing, I think that's going to help many people. And then I think the good thing about that runbook is it's probably even more useful before you start the journey, especially if you're in the planning stage, because a lot of the things I could see in there is knowledge that would be useful to know when you're designing and planning, even before you're operating. So that's probably one call out. I'll keep it as a useful resource for others to know about when they're going down that pathway.
Yeah, it's always a question, just alluded to earlier, it's always a question, do we get asked, what's the other considerations in moving from one deployment model to another and into RTF? And, we talk around having to manage your own infrastructure, and that's one of those key things and differences, I guess. So it's always having a point of reference like you showed, Johannes, is a good point of consideration to end users, which is let's just take a look through this and make sure you're capable, or you're working with a team that's capable of executing upon this. Otherwise, you're taking from something which is incredibly simple, like Cloud Hub, for example, and managing. It's all managed for yourselves, and going into another level of complexity. And I guess if your operations and infrastructure teams are not at that level, then you could be introducing unnecessary risk, I guess. So that's a good thing to note. So got one more question from Jeff. Is it possible to use AWS EC2 Spot instance with RTF? How fast can RTF mount a new resource?
Okay, so like me, the one that I understand for this question is how we can fast horizontally scaling the RTF, right? Maybe the worker node of so you have a 3 worker node and you need to add additional one using the AWS EC2 Spot. So again, this is not automatic procedure, so you need to have human task for this, or you can automate this one using the script and everything. But like mentioned in this run book, so we have call add server step. So first you can add if you use the automatic way, then you can use off center and just set that using the Off Center, just log into Off Center and add server and lab panel and put the IP and everything. And or you can do some manual works using the scripting and everything. You can automate this one. And of course, this is something that not instantly connected. So typically to add additional node is depending on the network. Everything is a cap at least at half hour for handling minimum requirement to add new server to the cluster.
Does that answer your question, Jeff? Very good, thank you. So I'd probably suggest and recommend to everyone so that this meetup will be videoed. Okay, so it will be posted back onto the meetup site. So as I said, there's an incredible amount of information that Yohanes took us through. So if you do need to come back as a point of reference, what we went through, yeah, just come back to the video on the meetup site and you'll have it there for you to refresh your memories. Okay. If there's no other questions, maybe Royston, it's maybe your turn.
Great. Do you have the slides to pull up there, Julian, for the announcements?
You want me to do it here?
Yes, I didn't have the compiled one handy. Especially, I know you added the bonus one.
Let me do that. One moment. Okay. There we go.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Julian. So just sharing some news and announcements for the community, as it's always good to be informed about what's happening. So if any of you missed out on the awesomeness that was Dreamforce last week, the good news is that I think most of the content, if not all of it, is available on Salesforce Plus, and the best link to go on to is mulesoft.com/Dreamforce. So there's a number of videos that are directly related to MuleSoft, including some of the new features around Composer and MuleSoft RPA. But it's also, if you are looking for more information in the Salesforce ecosystem, Dreamforce is the #1 event which helps people from the Salesforce ecosystem come together and share and learn. So highly recommend that. There's even some celebrities appearances like Will Smith in there as well. So it's not just all technical content. You can even do a live drawing class with the crew of Disney and learn how to draw Mickey Mouse using a pencil, if that's something that you might be interested in. All right, next slide, please. Next announcement is the MuleSoft Hackathon. So the second MuleSoft Hackathon ever has been kicked off and is now underway. So we have a submission period that is roughly 7 weeks. Now, unfortunately for our Singapore-based audience, there is a country restriction on the hackathon, mainly due to a number of legal requirements. So the countries that are eligible are mentioned on the slide here. And it's also mentioned on the link when you go on to DevPost as well. So if you are in an eligible country, you can participate and you can register. And the good news, which Akira would be very happy with, is that every person who registers is eligible for a 50% discount on training. So I think there's a special training offer associated with this as well. So yeah, looking forward to some amazing submissions. And if you're not eligible, there's no reason you can't still innovate. You just have to potentially wait for a future year for your submission to be recognized. All right. I did do a meetup earlier today where we talked about the hackathon. So if you're looking for more information, that session is available now on the meetup website. Next slide, please. Just covering some recent product enhancements. So the first and foremost is Transit Gateway support. So I know a number of our Cloud Hub customers were looking for more connectivity options, and Transit Gateway is typically top of that list. So the good news here is that Transit Gateway support was made available earlier in September. And that means that you can now use it to connect to a number of different network devices and options. So this is completely self-service. It's available right now all across the world on CloudHub. So yeah, if you are a CloudHub customer, it might be a good time to think about your network design and whether you want to take advantage of this option. All right, next slide, please. Just some connector updates to share with you all. So I know we have many developers here. And if you are a developer and you're building integrations, there are a number of connectors that have been introduced for Mule 4 in the last month. All of the ones on the left are brand new, as far as I remember. And there are links on the slide which will take you through references. However, they're all also available on Anypoint Exchange, so you can read about them. I can imagine that the Gmail connector and the Excel connector could be quite useful in a hackathon scenario as an example. For people who are using some of the existing connectors that are on the right-hand side, those have been updated recently with more functionality. So it's also a good reason to make sure your connectors are up to date and you're using the latest version in your MuleSoft projects. Over to the next slide, please. All right, very topical with Yohanes's presentation. So for any Runtime Fabric users out there, the latest version of Runtime Fabric, version 1.10, has been released. Has a number of new features in there, most of which is, the most important of which is flexibility around Ingress resources as templates. However, I think if you are using Runtime Fabric, you would know all about this and hopefully very eager to adopt this. So yeah, just making sure that there's awareness that this has been released. All right, and moving on, we should be multi-factor authentication. So this should be old news for most people, but I know that many customers out there still have not enabled MFA. There is no reason to really stall on this, at least for the majority of the accounts you have. So it's a very simple way to enhance the security of your organization. And starting, I think, last month, all new organizations have it enabled by default. But you might notice over time that you'll get lots of prompt for this. So I strongly encourage you to set it up. It's a very simple way to secure your account. And I think it will be made mandatory over the next year or two. So just bear this in mind. And moving on.
So only one comment on that, and piece of advice maybe from a recent experience with one client over the last 3 or 4 weeks is just make sure you go about this in a progressive way and make sure you do all of your initial analysis to understand what users are doing what with what, right? So in some instances, a client had the DevOps kind of model was running with a user, and essentially it wasn't authenticated essentially against someone's ADM, and so yeah, they ran into some issues and blocked releases and things like that. So just think about all the types of users, whether it be developers or operational teams or even system level users essentially, and make sure they're all tested and understood before kind of just simply switching the button.
Sage advice, Julian. And I love that 3 of us out of the 5 on the stage were somehow involved in that. So all too familiar with it. So yes, if you do have credentials being used by systems and CI/CD tools, they will very likely break. So Yohanes is an expert in connected app configuration as well for people who do enable MFA. So if you haven't looked into connected apps in the audience, please do. You will need it once MFA has been enabled.
Exactly. There's some good dollars saved advice in that minute of discussion. There you go. Next one. Moving on.
Next one. Good call. And Friends of Max. So we continue to release more videos in the Friends of Max series. There was one released 2 days ago about the Teams functionality, which I know many customers have been exploring. So that's not listed here, but over here we do have some of the newer videos as well as the most popular ones that are being watched. So all of these are typically between 5 and 15 minutes, and they're very good in terms of giving you a quick intro into a topic, showing how to actually do the task. You'll see the one on connected apps. So for anyone who hasn't set those up, that's probably the #1 resource I'd direct you to. And then they link you off to more enablement. So as much as we'd all like a Yohanes or a Alyanna in our teams, sometimes it's very hard to get them. So instead, we create some videos which will give us a bit of their goodness in bite-sized content. So yeah, strongly recommend you guys just keep across it, and I usually make it a point to mention it in the meetup announcements as well. And I think that should be the end of the announcements. Just have a look. Yep.
Yep, that was it. Yep.
Over to you, Julian.
So I guess as always, just looking ahead, hopefully we pretty much stick. I think we're about a week out this time, but we pretty much stick to trying these schedules. So targeting the 9th of December for our final meetup of 2021. Can't believe it already. Christmas nearly here, and at the moment we do have two tentative topics. One is on any point community manager, and one will be on API monetization. So there'll be demos on that. Again, if anyone has topics that they would like to propose, please do reach out. You can do that via the Meetup website, and you can get in contact with myself and Royston, or similarly on LinkedIn and all other social channels, etc. Okay, so yeah, that'll be our last one of this year, and so please do try and join us once again. Okay, to competition time, and Royce, I'm gonna do you a favor because I'm on full screen. I can't see any of the comments that will go in there, so I'm going to leave it to you to judge and tell me who's winning and who's not winning. So we will be testing how closely were you listening in today's session, and there was a lot of information there for sure. So we have 3 questions. The first response, valid response, that is, and right response, into the chat window will be eligible for a prize. So hopefully everyone's ready.
I've got my eagle eyes on.
You got your eagle eyes on. Okay, question 1. There you go. Can you name 2 of the common use cases for AMQ that Alyanna presented? There's even a question on it as well. So let's see.
All right, Alyanna, can you confirm if Dheeraj has given the correct answer?
No. So they provided the answers on what are the 2 types or 2 approaches. So I'm seeing, yeah.
All right. I don't think I've seen a correct answer yet.
Oh, Sri Raman. Yeah.
That would just be one, though, wouldn't it?
He sent another.
He sent another one.
Yep. The answers were already flashed for a second there. So.
Sorry, Alan, did you say Srinivas, or Srinivas was the first correct winner?
Actually, do we require 2, Julian, per answer? What if they only gave 1? So is that disqualified? In that case,
you make the rules. Julian makes the rules.
There you go. There's the answers. We'll take the first one.
So it looks like Sri Raman. Yeah.
That were put down there. Okay, very good. Okay, on to the next one. They're only going to get more difficult. So here's the question, and it will be followed up by the command. So according to Yohanes, if I type the command below, what would I be checking and why? Here it comes. Not easy this week.
Yohanes, what about which of the first answers do you think is correct?
Yohanes, do you know?
It's a lot.
So I've
So
got the
the
answer.
first one
I
that
have the
answered
answer.
correctly
Yeah.
is Johindra. Yep.
Okay.
Jyotindra Kumar. I think that's the first one
Okay,
that answered.
very good. Can we just let's make sure we get people's names.
Yep.
Okay, on to the next one. Very good. Question 3, the final one. Can you name one new connector and one enhanced connector?
Very cheeky.
The Royston. Okay. I know no one listens to me, so I hope they listen to you guys.
I think I mentioned some verbally, didn't I?
You did, so it explicitly went through. Might be good for a hackathon.
All right. I have a feeling, I'm not 100% sure LDAP was on the screen, but I think otherwise Moni might be our first winner with sharing 2.
LDAP was there.
There you go. So Moni, congratulations, because he mentioned Gmail and LDAP. So it was naming 2 that would get him the prize.
Very good.
All right. I've captured the names of everyone. However, you did mention for them to contact us via the.
Yeah, just send through. If you can maybe contact us via the meetup page, just because I know some people log in with different emails and stuff like that. We don't always capture email addresses. So, and it's nice. Sorry. And the key point for everything is we don't actually have your email addresses open to us. So, yeah. So if you could just contact us via the meetup page, and we'll get those prizes out to you. Okay. Very good. Thank you to everybody who joined today and stayed with us. Hopefully it was a useful session. Perhaps, I don't know, can we maybe get a picture if people can turn some cameras on? And maybe Royston, I know you got the power on. Let me stop sharing.
I will
as well.
turn
Maybe
lots
you
of
got some the
presenter
power.
modes on, so we can get
Yeah,
as many
exactly.
people to be on stage as
Do
possible.
stay with us for a couple of minutes, or a minute, and
All right. So
I know people are working from home, but don't be shy.
So for anyone who's got presenter mode turned on, you should be able to turn on your video and be part of our picture today. It's an arduous process on my side. I wouldn't mind some scripting for this next time.
You can add it into your app of your background and see if that works as well.
Right.
Okay.
I think I've almost gone through the whole list. All right. I'm hoping that's everyone who wants to be on has the opportunity to be on.
Got some cameras. You can use your camera at hopefully at the bottom. There we go. Some people are finding it.
All right, I have worked my way through the list. I think everyone has had presenter mode turned on.
Okay, we've got a lot of shy people.
We have a few people who've decided that was a good reason to leave us as well.
Okay, all right, let's get a quick snap of everyone waves. Okay, everyone's done their hair. See, I don't have to do hair, so it's all good. Nice. Sunil, you're with me. Okay, very good. All right. There we go. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you to everybody. Hopefully, yeah, I do have a photo. Yeah, hopefully everyone found some use out of the session. Thank you again to Ali and Yohanes for joining us and presenting. Much appreciated. good topics, and I wish everybody a good evening, and please stay safe as always, and look forward to seeing you in a couple of months' time. All right, bye for now. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.